All right, yep.
You can scan it.
Yeah, I guess I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Chris Spoke. I do a few things. I run a digital agency like Ivan, I guess. So this is my day job where we build websites and apps and that sort of thing. What brings me here is that I have a couple of development applications that I'm managing. One is an info project, so similar to what Paul does in Bloor West Village in Toronto's West End. And then we're going to build that one up to like 4 stories, 4 rental units, with a rough-in for the 5th, because if you know the game, that's the game. And then we're rezoning a mid-rise site in South Etobicoke at like Lakeshore and Browns Line within the Long Branch MTSA. And then on top of all of that, I built this website, which I want to tell you guys about. And kind of the inspiration for it, I tell this story that kind of like led to the idea. So prior to the digital agency, I was working at a development firm called the Benvenuto Group. We were doing rental and condos in Midtown Toronto. We were doing a mid-rise project on St. Clair at Winona. We just gone through this process of tendering out the construction for the high-rise, which was a 20-unit rental building at like Sudan and Redpath, which was by Yonge and Eglinton. And had a pretty good time at finding all the trades we needed for all the major categories, pricing that kind of worked with our pro forma. And it was a good experience. And then we went to go to tender the mid-rise project. And if you know anything about mid-rise in Toronto, it's a very kind of weird built form. So the city's design guidelines require that the rear of your building is within this 45-degree angular plane, so you're stepping back at every floor, which means you don't have any 2 typical floors. Every floor is kind of its own thing. Form workers don't like working on this stuff. Window guys don't like working on this stuff. And then at that time, there was just a huge construction cost escalation in mechanical systems as well. And we were dealing with the same construction manager, Reliance, that we had on the high-rise project. So they went to all the trades that they knew and put out the package and sent the drawings. And we either didn't get any bids from these guys, or we got bids that were just way too high from people who were overworked, who had a lot of projects in the pipeline, and frankly didn't want to work on a mid-rise project. They just don't like working on mid-rise. So then we thought, like, we're in a pretty good sub-market, right? Like St. Clair, Winona, which is between Christie and Dufferin, it's a pretty good market. There's a lot happening. We're just south of Forest Hill. And we were seeing mid-rise getting through entitlements and built in worse sub-markets. And here we were kind of getting bids that made it so that we wouldn't make any money on this project, and something didn't quite make sense. So it struck us that people were using kind of like tier 2, tier 3 trades, especially for these big categories, formwork, windows, and mechanical systems. So we had to go find these tier 2, tier 3 trades because our construction manager didn't know any of them. And it turns out there's no good way to like find these trades, right? You can't Google them. Build has this like book full of like all their members, but like there's no really, like you don't know like who's who. Like if it's a formwork guy who does like basements for single family detached houses or for high-rise projects, it wasn't a good resource. And at one point, like we were so lacking in options that I was driving literally from site to site on Kingston Road, like looking at construction hoarding signage to see like who's doing these guys formwork or who's doing their systems, which typically they don't put these signs on the hoarding. So then I'd like try to find a super and ask him, and it just seemed like a broken process. And at the same time, I mentioned I have this 1 foot in kind of like the digital world. So pre-development, I was working at other agencies. Now I have my own agency. And there's this cool site called buildwith.com. And if you're not a software guy, you might not know what it is, but if you are, you might. Buildwith.com, basically you can search any website on the internet, or at least certainly the big ones, and see the full stack of how the site was built. Like, so what coding languages did they use, what third-party tools, what APIs and SDKs, what infrastructure, which cloud hosting platform are they using. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could pull up like a mid-rise project, let's say on Kingston Road, and there was a list of like all the trades that contributed to its construction. So that's basically what we built. I try not to overstate it. It's kind of like a fancy yellow pages, but with this ability to like link the vendors to the projects, because that's what was missing from the build book is like, there was no portfolio, right? So I don't know if I see like ABC formwork, if they could do the sort of project that I was looking for. So I'll give you an example. So we say find designers, trades, and consultants for your next development project. We're focusing on like, and when I say we, this is just kind of like a thing on the side of my desk, to be honest. Mid-rise and high-rise projects, but you might do something like, if I look up One Delisle, which is one of my favorite projects in the city, going through construction now. It's called Buildstack because this is the stack of designers, consultants, and trades that are contributing to its development and construction. So It's basically this: we have these profiles for buildings, and it'll tell you who the developer is, which is in this case Slate Asset Management. Urban Strategies is their planner. You have some information on who's doing the design, so their arborist, architect of record. They have Studio Gang, which again is one of my favorite architects in the world, and so on. And then what we're doing now, which is a big process of like scraping data and calling people and calling trade associations to get this data, but we're trying to put together like their construction stack. So this is actually wrong. These two consultants should be in the design category, but actually all these guys should be in the design category. So this is not a great example. But the idea here is that like, yeah, we would know like from the major categories, right? So again, like your formwork, your window, mechanical systems, all the way down to like who's doing your drywall, who's doing your kitchens, that sort of thing. So that if you're looking for that information because you're putting together your team or you're putting together your bid list for your project, you have somewhere to start. And then kind of the other feature of this website is that if you then click on one of these guys, let's say Central Tree Care, which is an arborist, then they have their own profile, and then on their profile you have kind of like a directory of all the projects they've contributed to. And you can kind of keep doing that in this loop where, yeah, I don't know, we'll pick this one, 2450 Victoria Park Avenue. So again, Central Tree Care was the arborist for this project, and then like once again you go to this project and you see their stack. So that's basically it. That's like where it is right now. I've got two. Someone was talking about work. You were saying Midme's like Upwork for the real world or for the physical world. I've used Upwork for all of this. So we have two researchers in Serbia that I found through Upwork to again just like scrape data wherever they could find it. So a lot of the design companies have their own websites, like architects have their own websites, and you can pull their portfolios, but trades don't. So often it's like literally calling up these shops and asking them which project they worked on. So we have 3,200 projects in the database, 2,900 vendors that contributed to their design or construction. And we just want to build that out. And we just want it to be a useful resource like BuildWith is for the digital world and websites. And that's that. That's Buildstack.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yeah.
So back on that profile that you went to for the arborist,
Yeah.
like you had a list of all their addresses.
Yeah.
But is there a way that we can kind of like categorize them in terms of project type, like apartment buildings, new
Yeah.
custom build, something like that?
Yeah, so where's my backspace here? Yeah, so yeah, definitely. We're gonna keep layering stuff on. I guess I'll tell you some of that stuff. So yeah, in this project information for the project itself, we have GFA and stories. We want to add like building types so that you can filter by mid-rise, like that's specifically what I'm looking for. Or you might put a range of GFA, you know, if it's mid-rise, maybe it's like 60,000 square feet to 160,000. So that yes, when you go to the vendor's profile, you could also categorize them by the project type.
Right, and it's something similar to even your search bar where if I want to do a custom build in Welland or something, right? At this GFA,
Yeah.
you know, looking for an architect or whoever
Yeah.
it is, right?
Yeah.
And then see a list of them to see like who's actually done work in this area.
Yeah.
Because that's where we want to work with, like local people. And
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right now, like I would say not even most, but like all the data is within the GTA. And then I think eventually, I mean, like it is kind of like opened up where people could just kind of add themselves, right? Like you could add a project, you could add a company. But yeah, we're focusing on the GTA.
No, for sure. I'm just meaning like any project, right? You
Totally. Yeah, you could geographically set it. Yeah, it's actually crazy because again, I'm doing these two projects myself, and even like for our missing middle project, finding a planner, and I know a lot of planners, but like I'll email them, they won't reply, or they're too busy, or they're too expensive, and like I find it very hard to find like the most basic kind of consultant team for these things. So yeah, hopefully this helps where you could just say planner, project type, and you have 20 options, so you at least have a place to start.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Are you gonna go smaller, like, or is it focused on, I don't know, everything that needs like a ZBA or something?
I think like mid-rise, I'm starting here because one thing that surprised me working in a shop that did high-rise is like still how unsophisticated it was. So like you might think like, we were talking about this, that missing middle builders have fewer resources, but like a lot of these high-rise guys are also just kind of winging it, especially like junior development coordinators and managers, they just don't know where to start. And in an environment like ours until maybe this year where the trades are so stretched thin, you have to keep going down the long tail of trades to find one who will actually do your project at a reasonable price. So that's the kind of idea and focus for now.
Right on.
Yeah.
What's the, oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of my head. You go ahead.
So on this site, is the contractor himself writing that these certain tradesmen worked on my site, or is the tradesman going in and saying, okay, on this site, I worked on it, so how does that work?
Yeah, so right now it's all the data is being input by our researchers. I tried to start by going to the developers, because this will be the easiest way, right? Like, tell me your full stack and I'll just kind of like plug it in. And like they weren't eager to do that, right? Like they have their relationships and they don't want to share them. So you pretty much have to reverse engineer. If you go to the vendors, they're very happy to talk about what they contributed to because this is their portfolio, right? Like they get to show it off. It's just a much more diffuse group of people. So like you need to find them. So, which is like proven to be a more challenging problem than I anticipated. So you might start with like, there is an industry association for foreign workers. You might start with all their members. And again, like maybe 10% will have websites, and everyone else is just like a fax number, not even a phone number. So you like fax them your question. So, but like to me, the fact that it's that challenging means that if we could crack that nut of like properly aggregating that data, this should be, I think, helpful.
What's the monetization play?
The monetization play is if you're a vendor. So again, let's go to someone else. WSP, which does obviously a ton of stuff. You could basically turn on contact information, so you can turn on your website, your email address, your phone number, and we're even gonna put like a little job board here if you want to post jobs and like link to like another job posting network. And it'll be like a SaaS subscription to turn on a profile with contact info.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you verify? It's literally, if I'm a contractor, I can just go and put it there. I just type CN Tower.
Yeah.
So how do you verify the work they're saying they did it? It's really
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for you. So we were thinking, when you look at a resume, like a person's resume, this is the analogy I use. I'm sure a lot of people in this room like hire people. You look at a resume, you have the work experience section, and then you have the references section. When I hire people, I basically ignore the references section because this has been like obviously filtered for like the best possible references. Whereas the work experience, like this is what you've done, right? So here we had this decision about adding ratings and reviews. And we decided not to do that because I think that becomes even more of a problem, like gaming ratings and reviews. It's a very challenging thing, and I'm sure you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So we went with like, this is just work experience, this is just portfolio. But of course you could like lie about your portfolio. So I think like what you have to do ultimately is try to get enough people on the platform where everyone's kind of like looking at each other and calling each other out. So we're gonna probably build in some like mechanism for flagging or reporting stuff. And then if you're a bad actor that gets repeatedly flagged, then we just bump you off or something.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Chris. This is awesome.
Yeah.